The security guard at the front desk barely looked up when Lena walked past him that Tuesday afternoon. She was small for 13, the kind of kid who blended into corners and hallways without anyone noticing. Her mom worked in the maintenance office on the third floor of the Reed Technologies building, and sometimes after school, Lena would wait there until her shift ended. It was easier than going home to an empty apartment. That day, Lena wandered down a corridor she didn't usually take. The building was enormous, all glass and steel, and she liked exploring the quiet parts where nobody bothered her. She turned a corner near the executive suites and heard voices coming from behind a partially open door. She wouldn't have stopped at all, except that the voices weren't speaking English. They were speaking Russian. Lena's grandmother had raised her until she was 7, back when they still lived in Brooklyn. Babushka spoke Russian at home, always, and even though Lena's mom wanted her to forget it and fit in better, the language had stuck. She understood more than she could speak, and when she heard those sharp, hushed words drifting through the doorway, something in her went still. She moved closer, not because she wanted to eavesdrop, but because hearing Russian in a place like this felt wrong. Out of place. The voices were low and tense, and she caught fragments at first. Then she heard a phrase that made her stomach drop. Topливная система. Zavtry Yutrum. Fuel system. Tomorrow morning. She pressed herself against the wall, listening harder now. Another voice answered, deeper, angrier. Reed nikada any uznает. Somali observatsiya vivazduk. Reed will never know. The plane will explode in the air. Lena's hands went cold. She didn't breathe. She didn't move. The voices shifted, footsteps approaching the door, and she turned and ran, her sneakers silent on the polished floor. She didn't stop until she reached her mom's office, her heart slamming against her ribs. Her mom looked up from her desk, surprised. Lena, what's wrong? I need to tell someone something, Lena said, her voice shaking. Something bad? Something really bad. Her mom frowned, setting down her pen. What are you talking about? There's a man, Lena said. I heard people talking about him. Alexander Reed. They're going to hurt him. They're going to blow up his plane. Her mom's face went pale, then tight with worry. Lena, that's not funny. I'm not joking, Mom. I heard them. They were speaking Russian. They said his plane is going to explode tomorrow morning. Her mom stood up, clearly shaken but trying to stay calm. Who did you hear? Where? I don't know who they were. They were in one of the offices upstairs. I just heard them through the door. Her mom hesitated, torn between disbelief and the genuine fear in her daughter's eyes. Finally, she picked up the phone. I'm calling security. 10 minutes later, Lena sat in a small, windowless room with 2 men in dark suits. One of them was older, with graying hair and a face that looked like it had seen too many long nights. The other was younger, sharper, watching her with the kind of focus that made her feel like she was under a microscope. Tell us again what you heard, the older man said. Lena repeated it, word for word. She told him about the Russian, about the fuel system, about the plane exploding in the air. The men exchanged glances. Do you speak Russian? The younger one asked. My grandmother taught me, Lena said quietly. I don't speak it much anymore, but I understand it. The older man leaned back in his chair. And you're sure that's what they said? I'm sure. There was a long silence. Then the younger man stood. Wait here. They left her alone in the room for what felt like hours. When the door finally opened again, it wasn't the 2 men who walked in. It was Alexander Reed himself. Lena had seen his picture before, in magazines and on the news. He was tall, maybe in his early 50s, with dark hair starting to silver at the temples and eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. He didn't look angry, but he didn't look friendly either. He looked like someone who had learned a long time ago not to trust anyone. He sat down across from her, studying her face. You're the girl who heard the conversation. Lena nodded. My security team thinks you're mistaken, Reed said, or that you're making it up for attention. I'm not, Lena said. Her voice came out stronger than she expected. I heard them. I know what I heard. Reed tilted his head slightly. Repeat the exact words. In Russian, Lena's throat tightened, but she forced the words out. Toplavnea sistema. Zavtri utrum. Reed nikagda any uznate. Somalia observatsia v vozduk. Something shifted in Reed's expression. It wasn't belief, not quite, but it wasn't dismissal either. It was something closer to unease. Why would you come forward with this? He asked. Because someone's going to die if I don't, Lena said simply. Reed was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood. Wait here. He left the room, and Lena sat alone again, her hands folded tightly in her lap. She didn't know if she'd done the right thing. She didn't know if anyone would believe her, but she knew what she'd heard, and she couldn't just pretend it hadn't happened. An hour later, Reed came back. This time, he looked different. Tired, maybe, or shaken. We're conducting a security inspection on my jet, he said. If you're right, we'll find something. If you're wrong, you and your mother will leave this building and never come back. Lena nodded. Okay, why did you do this? Reed asked, his voice softer now. You don't know me. You don't know me anything. Because it's the right thing to do, Lena said. My grandma used to say that if you know something bad is going to happen, and you don't say anything, you're a part of it. I didn't want to be part of it. Reed looked at her for a long time, and for the first time, something in his face softened. Your grandmother sounds like a smart woman. She was, Lena said quietly. She died 2 years ago. Reed nodded slowly. Then he turned and walked out. The next morning, Lena and her mom sat in the maintenance office, waiting. Her mom hadn't said much since the night before, but she kept glancing at Lena with a mixture of pride and worry that Lena didn't quite know how to read. When the door opened, it was the older security man from the day before. His expression was grim. They found it, he said. Lena's mom stood up, her hand flying to her mouth. Found what? Tampered wiring in the jet's fuel system. Someone had rigged it to cause a catastrophic failure mid-flight. If Mr. Reed had taken off this morning, the plane would have gone down over the Atlantic. Lena felt dizzy. She hadn't let herself believe it was real until now. She'd hoped, in some small corner of her mind, that she'd been wrong. Who did it? Her mom asked. The man hesitated. That's still under investigation. But we believe it was an inside job. Someone with access to the jet and the technical knowledge to sabotage it without being detected. 2 days later, Lena was called back to the building. This time, she was taken to a different room, one with windows that looked out over the city. Reed was there, along with a woman in a police uniform and the same 2 security men from before. We found the person responsible, Reed said without preamble. It was one of my senior executives. He'd been selling company secrets to a competitor for months, and when I started an internal audit, he panicked. He thought if I died in an accident, the investigation would stall long enough for him to cover his tracks. Lena stared at him, trying to process it. He was going to kill you just to buy time? People do terrible things when they're desperate, Reed said. But we wouldn't have caught him if you hadn't come forward. The inspection you triggered led us to review security footage near the hangar. We found him on camera. The policewoman stepped forward. We also traced the conversation you overheard. The executive had hired 2 contractors to carry out the sabotage. They were speaking Russian because they thought no one in the building would understand them. Lena felt a strange, hollow relief. She'd been right. She'd done the right thing. But it didn't feel triumphant. It just felt heavy. Reed sat down across from her, his expression unreadable. I've spent my entire career trusting no one, he said quietly. I built walls around myself because I thought that was the only way to survive in this world. And then a 13-year-old girl I'd never met risked everything to warn me about something she couldn't have known for sure. You didn't have proof. You didn't have evidence. You just had your word, and you gave it anyway. Lena didn't know what to say. I owe you my life, Reed said, and I don't take that lightly. I just did what anyone would do, Lena said. No, Reed said. You did what almost no one would do. Most people would have walked away. They would have told themselves it wasn't their problem, or that no one would believe them, or that it was too risky to get involved. You didn't, and I'll never forget that. He reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. This is for you. And for your mother, it's not payment, because you can't pay someone for saving your life. But I want to make sure you and your family are taken care of. Lena's mom started to protest, but Reed held up a hand. Please, let me do this. When they left the building that afternoon, Lena didn't feel like a hero. She felt like the same quiet, invisible girl she'd always been. But something had shifted inside her. She'd learned that speaking up mattered, even when it was terrifying. That truth had weight, even when it came from someone small and overlooked. Reed stood at his office window, watching the city below. His jet was grounded for another week, while investigators combed through every inch of it. He'd canceled 3 meetings and postponed a major deal, but none of that mattered now. He thought about Lena, about the way she'd looked at him with those serious, unflinching eyes. She hadn't asked for anything. She hadn't wanted recognition or reward. She just wanted to do the right thing. And in doing so, she reminded him of something he'd forgotten a long time ago. That sometimes the people you trust least are the ones closest to you. And sometimes the people who save you are the ones you never saw coming. He made a silent promise to himself. Standing there in the fading afternoon light, he would never ignore a warning again, no matter how small the source. He would never be so arrogant as to think he knew everything, or so closed off that he missed the truth when it was standing right in front of him. Because a 13-year-old girl with a grandmother's language in her heart had seen what no one else had seen, and she'd cared enough to speak. That, Reed thought, was the kind of courage the world needed more of.